Welcome back to Data Smarts, the show where smart people come to make their businesses even smarter. Each episode, we break down real-world use cases, automation wins, tools, or strategies that will actually help you take back control of your business and life. So let's get into it. All right, so I just wanted to talk about this really quickly because I just learned about it and I thought it was super cool. And from someone who has been a relatively early adopter in terms of AI and agents and already really started to work in several different platforms, I found this super interesting. So I just was watching a podcast with Greg Eisenberg and the founder, I believe it's the founder of Lindy.AI, Flo Crivello. And what is super, super interesting and fascinating about Lindy.AI, and I'll get more in detail in just a second, is that the way that it appears to me, and I haven't used this tool yet, but just judging from what they were talking about and what they were showing, is that this tool actually has AI built into all of the individual piece parts within the workflow. So let's say, for example, you wanted to build a meeting recording agent. You might have to actually string together three different inputs, right? You might have three different actions in a standard workflow if you're using Zapier, N8N, or Make, or any of those tools. And then on each tool, you might have to do some configuration. So for example, inside of N8N, a lot of that is you're having to go and pull different objects in JSON and map them. And you might still be able to add a prompt inside the individual tool, but you're still having to do some connecting and a little bit of architecture and mapping across the tools in order to build the workflow that you want. From what I saw inside of Lindy, you just string those tools together and then you are basically telling each individual tool what you want it to do. And then it is going and it is configuring each tool as it would be required in order to perform the necessary task and then pass it on to the others. In one example that they gave, they simply fed the tool a link to a YouTube video and just left it, didn't do anything. And it actually went in and automatically downloaded all the comments for that YouTube video. Now, whether that's what you wanted to do or not, that's a different issue. But the fact that it can do that automatically just speaks to some of the intelligence that's built into this. So what I want to do is just take a second. I just did a little bit of research on Lindy.AI. Again, I have not used the platform, but I will be here shortly. But I just wanted to review some of the key things that I find different, or I think will be different, using this tool versus some of the other tools. Let's just go over what is Lindy.AI, right? So the response I got when I was looking into this is basically it is a workspace assistant platform, right? Obviously AI powered, but it's really designed to create and deploy powerful customized agents, right? Kind of like what we just talked about, that can interact with tools, data, and people without any need for requiring any type of code. So a few bullet points here on why Lindy.AI is potentially different than some of the other chat agent platforms. Workflow aware by design, right? So it's not just a chat interface. It can actually follow multi-step instructions using APIs, etc. It can also interact with tools in sequencing. So it's like if Zapier and ChatGPT and Airtable were all combined into one interface, right? Another thing, customizable AI agents. This is a pretty cool one. You can build and deploy specialized agents for roles like an executive assistant, right? I mean, that would be super helpful. And it's an easy one to start with. You can do sales rep, customer support, data analyst is also another one that I've seen a lot about. And again, all of this is tailored to your internal tools and your brand voice, your workflows, etc. All of that can be customized right inside of Lindy, which again is pretty sweet. Bidirectional interactions or integrations, that's another thing. So it can read and write to other platforms. So some of these tools you might find are significantly better at reading data in, but when it comes to executing a write where you're actually inputting data back into that system, Some of them fall down in terms of configuration and how much control you have over that. Lindy specifically looks at helping people go bidirectional, so just one tool to read from and write to. That's obviously a big one. Now, contextual memory and threat awareness. This is something that I found to be very, very challenging inside of N8N when I was working inside of building agents in there, is trying to figure out the threat awareness and also the memory, like how to set the memory up so that the chat agent remembers the context in which you're talking. That was a big one for me. So the fact that they have this built in, that is also pretty cool. The other thing, Lindy is specifically designed not just for individuals, but for teams. I've not had a use case yet where I had a partner working on, let's say, the same agent that I am, or needing to modify an agent that I created. Could definitely see that happening in the future. So that is pretty cool. And then also, obviously, just no code, but still developer friendly. So non-technical users can use it, but also if you are a developer and you want to expand the capabilities with custom APIs or logic, you can do that too. So it kind of plays to both sides, which I think is also pretty neat. So now I just wanted to touch on a few of the use cases, at least that I've seen so far, that I think would be super interesting. So one use case, automating internal operations, generating proposals, summarizing meetings, having those meeting notes added to Google Docs, right? A lot of executive assistant functionality, booking appointments, going back and forth with calendar requests. I've seen examples of Lindy agents just being CC'd on emails from executives to potential candidates saying, hey, let's find time. My agent will help. And then the agent is actually going back and forth with the candidate, trying to figure out a time. Once they find a time, they book the meeting, send the meeting invite, right? And then they'll also be tracking that meeting, taking the notes, transcribing the notes, and then adding the notes or action items to a Google Doc. Pretty cool. Another thing that you see a lot is it being used for sales outreach. So prospect account research and potentially even, building outbound messaging. That is also a really good use case for this. Project tracking, task management, bolting something like this into Asana, into Jira, and allowing it to help either provide summaries or, automated reporting. Great use case. The other really cool thing that this is the first time I've heard about this is inside of Lindy is agent swarms, right? So imagine that you had an agent and you wanted that agent to build 500 outbound prospect emails. Instead of that one agent trying to line up 500 accounts in a linear fashion, it'll actually generate a swarm of agents, which is basically duplicating that single instance across multiple instances to get that work done more efficiently and also at a higher level of quality, right? So typically if you have an agent and that agent is down to the 500th or the 1,000th task, the quality of that might fall off a little bit. But with a swarm, you're basically getting, let's call it best effort, right? Best effort and scale. So I think that is very, very interesting and will definitely be an interesting use case for Lindy is deploying agent swarms. And then if you want to get super meta, you can deploy swarms inside of swarms. So that will be something that I'm definitely looking forward to diving more into once I get into the platform. So now the only thing that is left to do is to actually get in there to Lindy.AI, set up an account, and start to generate some, workflows and see how that compares to Zapier, Make.com, or N8N, some of the tools that I'm more familiar with. From what I've heard, I'm pretty excited about it. I do think that this could be a game changer and will definitely open the eyes to some of the less technical people out there that are still trying to get into AI agents and workflows. So super excited to check this out. So if you learned something today, please consider leaving a review, subscribing, sharing this episode with a friend, and be sure to go over to datasmarts.io, subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss any of the updates. Until next time, stay smart.